Okay, if you're having trouble with the 5-5 big idea assignment, there's an extra page in our notes that I want to go over that I didn't go over in class, but I'm doing this as a video so that if you need help on the big idea assignment, so just watch this. I'm only going to do the odds. I have the answers here for the evens that gives you some extra problems. So if you go in your notes, you can try some of the evens and then just compare your answer to what you see here. So we're going to do number one together. Number one is just asking you to add these two functions together. So we're going to add f of x and g of x together. And then we're going to evaluate when x is negative 1,000. We'll need a calculator for that, and then we'll do the difference. And then we need to state the domain for each problem. So let's do the addition part first. So let's put these in red. So here's my addition. I'm going to add this and this. These are like terms. They're both x's raised to 1/3. That's what cube root means. So I can take negative 1/2 and add it to a 9/2. And again, if you need a calculator for that, you can use a calculator. But I am hoping that everyone understands it's really going to be 8/2, which is 4. Okay, so you're left with, when you add this and this, you're left with a 4, and it stays the cube root of x. Okay, so that's the answer for the sum. If you take a calculator, you take your calculator and you take 4, and then I'll hit the math key to pull up cube root. So 4 cube root, and I'm supposed to substitute in, you can see right here, x is supposed to be negative 1,000. So once I substitute in, we'll let the calculator do its job, and it tells me negative 40. So there's the answer, negative 40. And I need you to realize the domain then is all reals. You can take the cube root of any number. Okay, so there's the answer for the sum. Let's do subtraction. I'm taking negative 1/2 minus 9/2. And again, you can use a calculator. If you can't do that in your head, it's going to end up becoming negative 10/2, which is simply negative 5. Okay, so then we're going to once again pick up our calculator. This time we type in negative 5 math option 4, and I put in negative 1,000, and I hit enter, and I get that decimal, which shouldn't be the correct thing. Oh, I did negative 10,000. Sorry, it's negative 5 cube root, and I'm using my pad, so it's a little bit harder to type. I had an extra 0, and my eyeballs did not see it, but I knew that we were supposed to get a 50, and we get a 50. So there's 50, and my domain is still all reals. Okay, so you can combine like terms. Okay, let's skip down to number 3. Number 3 is just like number 2. And so when we add, we're just going to combine like terms. So when we add, I'm going to take all my like terms, this, and I'm going to combine them. I'm going to get x cubed. And then when I look at my x squareds, I only have 2x squareds. And then that's gone. And then my number is going to become 12 plus 9, which is 21. Okay. And then we're going to calculate when x is 2. So we're going to take this. So this is the sum. This is the answer that I would be looking for if I just told you to add the two functions together. And then when you substitute in a 2, again, I'll show on a calculator. Let the calculator do its job. Hopefully I can type it in correctly. I'm going to take 2 and I'm going to cube it. Push away. And then I'm going to have plus 2. And then it's going to be 2 squared. There it is. So 2 times 2 squared, and then plus 21. And you get a 37. Come on. Like pauses after I use the calculator. 37 is the answer. And then your domain, once again, is all real. I can raise any number to a third, I don't see any roots or anything to restrict the domain. It's all reals. Okay. Now, please be careful with subtraction. Okay. With subtraction, it's totally, you have to change the opposite. So I'm taking F minus all this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to change all these to their opposite. I'm going to make that a negative. I'm going to make that a positive, and I'm going to make the 9 a negative. And now all I have to do is combine like terms. So when we combine like terms, the cubes become 7x cubed. Okay. And then that's gone. It looks like I'm going to have a minus 2x squared. And it looks like I'm going to have a plus 3. That's all we have to do when we are subtracting. We're adding the opposites. So now, just to save time, if you plug in a 2 and use a calculator, 7 times 2 cubed minus 2 times 2 squared plus 3, you're going to get a 51. Okay, and once again, the domain is all reals. Okay, so please look at number 4. Make sure you understand why my domain has to be positive. So I cannot substitute a negative in and take the fourth root of it and get a real answer. So we restrict only inputs that are positive. Now for a division problem, the difference is still going to be restricted for our domain. So only positive numbers can be substituted in. Okay, so now this last part, these last two, we're going to find the product and then we are going to divide. Okay, so we're going to find the quotient and we're going to find the product. So let's first multiply F times G. Totally different set of rules when you multiply. When you multiply, you can multiply anything. So we'll start with negative 1 times 2, which is simply negative 2. Okay, we'll get negative 2. Now, please understand, this exponent, this really means x to the 1/3. Okay, so when you are multiplying, you add your exponents. So you can't do this in your head. Like I know it's going to be 10/3, but let me show on a calculator why 3 plus 1/3, 1 divided by 3. Calculator is going to give this as a decimal, but math, enter, and that's how Big Ideas wants you to type it in. It's going to be 10/3. Come on. 10 over 3. There's the product. Okay. And then once we have that, we have to then replace the x with a negative 64. You're going to see that there's a really big number, or actually a really small number because it's going to be negative. But it's going to be negative 2, put parentheses, and type a negative 64 and raise it to the 10/3. That's all this problem's asking us to do. And you're going to see that it's negative 2,097,152. So the answer is negative 2,097,152. Again, you can't do that without a calculator. Okay. Since we're dealing with cube root and we cubed, your domain is going to be all reals. Okay, it's not square root, it's not an even root. You don't have to restrict any negatives. Okay, so now F over G. So now we're going to divide. We're going to have this up top, and we're going to have this, and I'm going to write it as an exponent because we're going to end up subtracting our exponents. So this is just going to be a negative 1/2. Okay, just need you to realize it's negative 1 up top, 2 in the bottom, comes out to negative 1/2. And then I'll ask the calculator. Again, it's not that difficult to get 8/3 in your head, but if you can't, that calculator has no problem taking the exponent up top minus the exponent in the bottom. Okay, when I hit math, enter, I'm going to prove that it's 8/3. Hit the pen each time. So now there's my quotient. And then we need to plug in. So just like before, I'll ask the calculator. So I'm just going to type in negative 0.5. That's a little bit easier than negative 1 divided by 2. And I'm going to put a negative 64. And I'm going to raise this to the 8/3. And we're going to get negative negative 32,768. Okay, calculator does all the work for us. Okay, that last problem that we're going to do, and you can again check the answers to number 5. You can see what I did for number 5. I multiplied 12 times 11. I got 132. I added 1 plus 1 half, which is 3 halves. When you plug in a 4, you get this. And now I have to restrict my domain to only positive numbers and 0. Okay. But now when I divide, I even have to throw out 0. So now I can only accept positive numbers. So the first for the product, I can use 0. I can plug in 0 here and get an answer. It's just because it was a division problem, I have to be aware of what would make you divide by 0. Okay, so you have to throw out 0 in that case. So then the last one that we're going to do, we can easily multiply F times G. So if you need a calculator, you can use a calculator. 0.25 times negative 4 is just going to be a negative 1. Okay? And then you add your exponents. So again, if you can't add fractions, like again, a common denominator, I know this is 2/6. I know this would be 9/6. And then I can add, and I'm going to get 11/6. But the good news is, you never learned that from elementary, adding your fractions. We can do it on a calculator. Okay, calculator gives you decimal, math, enter, and we get 11 over 6. That's a 6. Okay, and then there's my product. All I need to do is plug in a 1 in for x. Now, I can do this one in my head. 1 raised to 11/6 is just a 1, so you're going to get an answer of negative 1. Okay? Your domain has to be greater or equal to 0. Okay? Because of this even root. Okay? Because of an even root, I would get an error if I raised it to an even root. Okay? So keep that in mind. The last problem, I am dividing. I'm taking this over my rule for g of x. Okay, don't panic. It's not that difficult. When you actually simplify this part, you can see that it's going to be negative 1/16. It's really 1/4 divided by negative 4, which is really 1/4 times negative 1 over 4, which be when you multiply the top, you get 1. You multiply the bottom, you get 16, and it's going to be negative. And then we subtract our exponents. 1/3 minus 2/3 is going to be negative 7/6. Okay, let me quickly show that on the calculator again. You take the exponent up top. Okay, so you're going to practice this in big ideas, minus the exponent in the bottom. And again, you'll get a decimal, math, enter, and you're going to see why it's negative 1/6. So then my last thing I need to do is they tell us to replace this with a 1. And if you replace this with a 1, this whole thing, again, this part comes out to 1. So you're just left with negative 1 over 16. Okay. And the last thing I need to mention is we have to throw out 0. We cannot include 0 because if you look back here, before we simplified it, if someone would plug in a 0 right here into this division problem, you would end up getting undefined. You're not allowed to divide by 0. So I can't use any negative numbers, and I can't use 0 because 0 would cause us to divide by 0. Okay, so you actually state the domain before you simplify. So when it's a division problem, look at what's in the bottom and think, is there a number that would turn my denominator into 0? So hopefully you were able to follow along. Try number 8. Talk yourself through how I got this answer. I multiplied 36 times 4. And then down here, and plus I added my exponents. Then for a division, 36 divided by 4 is 9. 7/4 minus 1/2. Prove to yourself that it's 5/4. And then once you have a new rule, you can plug in any number. Okay, that's how you evaluate then. So we should know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide these function notation. Okay, so it's a simple matter of just applying the appropriate rule. Okay, thank you for watching. Hopefully that will help you do the Big Ideas 5.5 assignment.